I would like to call the Human Resources Board meeting to order at 4:06. And if everyone has a copy of their minutes, we could take a few minutes to take a look at those.
Looks good to me.
Has everyone had a chance to look at them?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay.
One edit, Diane.
Yep.
So there is an E on my name, Lynn.
Must be in the body of the,
Yeah, it, well, up in the present and also in number 2.
oh, my apologies, and then number 2, then. Thank you. So if everyone's had a chance to look at them, I'll entertain a motion to approve.
Motion?
Second?
Any discussion?
None for me.
Nope.
No.
Okay. So all those in favor say aye.
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 Great, thank you. Next item on the agenda is any employee issues.
I've received none.
So there have been no employee issues brought to the attention of me for the Human Resources Board either. Thank you. Number 4, personnel actions and job vacancies. So I do have a couple.
This doesn't work either.
We have, since our last meeting, we've hired the assistant town planner that we had classified. Her name is Kristen Grubbs. She comes to us with a lot of experience. So she started on the 30th of January. Martha Taylor's putting her right straight to work. So they're going to be working closely over the next 6 months with most likely a transition in that role. But it's great to have her with us. I think I had reported at the last meeting, but I have a PAN from Mark that we hired our assistant accountant position with the changes in the accounting function. Eileen DeVoe is getting ready to retire, and Lillian Craig, the assistant town accountant, has moved into her role for the next 6 months. They're working side by side. So we've hired Ann McLaughlin as the new assistant town accountant, and she's settling in nicely, and we're happy to have her as well. And then Patty, the 2 others that came about at the last select board meeting for the promotions within the police department. Maybe you could speak to those.
I can, thank you. So, resultant of the chain reaction of the promotions that happened after Chief Lucy retired, we have now promoted Sergeant Steve Jenkins to the assignment of Detective Sergeant. He's filling the vacancy that was left when Aaron Wykowski became the deputy chief. And then to fill Sergeant Jenkins' evening shift, supervisory shift, we promoted Officer Stephen Smith to sergeant. So those took place on the 14th or 15th.
Yep.
So they're both settling in nicely and doing great.
Great. There actually was one other one that I remember. We just recently added our assistant town clerk, which I know we discussed at our last meeting. So Cassidy Brown, who was working for the Harbor Master Department, she is a up-and-coming college graduate. She hasn't graduated yet, but she is filling the role of the assistant town clerk and working with Gretchen. She just started a couple weeks ago, so that position has been filled. And Lynn, you had asked at the last meeting about sort of the succession plan and the up-and-coming election. And you asked what kind of election that was, so I wanted to make sure I clarified that it is a town-wide election. So there are a multiple of board members, select board, Gretchen, the town clerk position. There are a bunch of positions across the town, and there is a town election. It's not a state or a county or federal election. It's a local election.
And what's the date of that? Approximate?
It's a Tuesday in April.
I was just gonna
Okay,
say.
a Tuesday in
April.
Okay.
It's a Tuesday in April. It is on.
That's fine. I'm sure I'll see it at
Actually,
the
I'm
firehouse.
sorry, I take that back. The town meeting is a Tuesday in April. The election, I believe, is the first Tuesday in May.
Okay,
But
Yeah, I thought
both
it
of those
was-
dates, I believe, are on the website.
okay.
But I wanted to clarify because you asked the
There's
question.
nobody running against Scotch.
I'm not sure.
I mean,
I don't think
I
so.
signed her papers the other day, and,
I don't think there is.
yeah,
I haven't looked at the warrant. I don't even know if the warrant's out yet in terms of who's running.
Yeah, I
but
think there's still time for people to pull papers.
yeah.
I think the papers have been pulled, but I think turning them in, but, so I did want to just get back to you on that.
There's also, we've posted for Cassidy's vacancy at the town landing for harbor master helper. Has been posted with the town as well, so we're looking for somebody to help out down at the landing. She was great over the summers, but where she's taken a,
Are you looking for one or more?
depending on how much somebody would be able to work, we're either looking for a few who can work 16 to 20 hours a week, or one who can work, up to 30 hours a week. So,
Okay. Anything else?
I have a question about the assistant planner. And you mentioned that you're, I don't know that I'm getting the wording right, but, your plan, it's a succession plan, or, so can you just clarify that for me?
So, the planning department originally consisted of Martha Taylor, and Martha Taylor has a tremendous workload for the town in terms of planning and the things that come across her desk. At one point, they had hired an assistant for her, really to help her with, the tasks of processing applications and accounts payable and that kind of thing and the like. And the girl who had filled that role had gone out on maternity leave back just about a year ago now. And so Martha was, again, handling the department for herself. And my understanding, although I don't have anything specifically in writing, is that this was intended more as a higher level than an assistant for the planning department, with the intention that at some point Martha will be announcing her retirement.
Okay.
Thank you. Kristen has a deep background.
She has a very strong background, has
Yeah.
worked in other municipal planning departments and other roles.
I've been teaching for 30 years, post-war history course with her husband, Perry Nelson, and I've met her a bunch of times. She's a special individual with a lot of background in this work.
Mhm.
She is way overqualified for the term. So she and Martha will make a great team. And she's a Byfield product. She's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I mean, I think in the 13 years that I've been here, this past year and a half, I've seen a lot of these sort of retirements coming up or changes, and it's been really nice to be able to see that there's been some collaboration beforehand to transition and hand off the baton, so to speak. So I think this was just another one of those situations, so.
Good.
Martha hasn't officially announced her retirement date, but the understanding is that that's why Kristen was brought in.
Hiring from within. I mean, you know where I stand on that, Chief. In the circumstance, when you look at it, town clerk, now that's not a position you want to start from scratch. You want to have some required in-depth training. That is a remarkably complicated position with a lot of responsibility. And we're lucky to have somebody that can slip into that position.
Good. All right, with nothing else for personnel actions and job vacancies, we'll move on to workplace ethics and discrimination issues, which Mark typically handles, but I'm not aware of anything.
I'm not aware of anything either.
Okay. Patty, item 6, if you could speak to any safety issues or anything that's come up.
There's nothing that has been brought to my attention, nothing that I've kind of gathered during my travels.
Has there been any update with your safety committee with Triton? Have you met again, or have you?
We meet with the Triton Safety Committee for both. There's one committee for the high school and middle school that we were on, and then there's another one with the elementary school. So we meet with both of them monthly to go over general school safety things. And one thing that we did do during February vacation was we held our first collaborative cross-training with Rowley Police Department at Triton High and Middle School. So it was all staff from both police departments, so that we could make sure that everyone had a layout of the school, that we start to work collaboratively in the event that there is a critical incident at the school, knowing that Rowley officers are probably going to be at Triton around the same time as our Newbury officers, other than our school resource officer, but the responding officers, Rowley's probably going to get there a similar time that we are, just because of the proximity between Rowley and Triton High and Middle. So Chief Dumas and I coordinated a training for both departments just to start making sure that all officers have a layout of the school, that we have maps of the school, that all of our key cards work in the school, that we have access to everything we're supposed to, and that we start learning how to move tactically as a unit between the two departments throughout the school for different critical incidences. So this is hopefully one of many trainings that we're going to do with Rowley, and then we'll eventually incorporate the fire departments and then other law enforcement agencies as we get more comfortable with each other, just to make sure we're able to provide, safe and rapid response to schools.
Good.
Excellent,
Good.
excellent.
Good.
Thank you.
Yep.
So we'll move on to any other business.
I have a question.
Okay.
Org chart, and I know that we put that on pause.
Yep.
But as you were just going through the vacancies and the planning, I'm thinking, I want a visual.
Yep.
I want to just look at something and just see what our organization looks like.
Okay.
Do we have anything in place that,
So we
without links and everything else?
Right. So Tracy may have that, but I can speak to why it got put on hold.
Yeah, and I remember that, we were doing a lot of work, and then there was some things coming up, and, the decision was made to put it on hold, which is great, that's fine, but I'm just wondering is there anything, in the archives that could be just brought forward so that.
I can certainly check on that. I mean, if there is something that's in the archives, it's probably really out of date.
Sure.
But I can certainly check on that. I know that about over a year ago, we were charged with the idea of coming up with an org chart for
Yeah.
exactly that reason, because it was very important to see hierarchy and interaction with boards and so forth. And we started on that path. We got the software. We met with Matt, and we were starting to create that org chart. And when we set our budgets in February, this year, there was a different way in which we were setting our org charts, and we were utilizing the resources of what I think was the Collins Center, as well as another supporting, and they are gonna help us through that budget process, and it wasn't just the budget process, goal setting,
That's great.
in terms of who do we report to, who's on what board, and so forth. So I believe that that's why we put it on hold, because
Yeah.
Tracy's gonna be utilizing that resources to help us really get this thing done and have it done. So I will check to see what we have from an archive. I will check
Yeah.
with Tracy to see what she has,
Yeah.
knowing that it would be really not even a draft version, it would be really historical, whatever we have on file for the last one.
I should probably share with you as well, because when I took over, I updated our org chart for just the police department and all of the departments that kind of fall under our umbrella.
Okay.
So I have an updated version of that as well.
Did you submit that when you did?
I did.
Okay, yeah, because in our budget write-ups this year, it was a little bit more comprehensive. We had to do an actual org chart for our own department. So,
Yeah.
so I think
There was a
the,
lot going on with that project.
yeah, so I think, it's not that it's lost and it's
Yeah.
not stopped.
Yeah.
It's
Right.
moving forward, it's just moving forward, I think, with a little bit more support and a little bit more eyes on it, if you will. So, I will check to see what we have.
Okay, and I'm just kind of leafing through here to see if there's anything in this book that, even that could be an outdated one.
Is it in the personnel part? There
Yeah.
isn't one in there.
Diane, I want to prove you wrong.
Oh, you do?
Just, I want to look through here and go, oh, there's something.
All right.
No, I'm kidding, you know this.
I'm
You
like,
did-
wait, what is
you
she
did all
saying?
the recent
I'm like, wait.
revisions.
I was like, wait, oh, okay.
Yeah.
takes a little while.
Question.
Yes.
Madam Chairman. We're talking about assistant town planner hired, assistant town accountant. What's the enabling statute or bylaw relative to assistants? Can, if something happens or things get busy, is it up to the discretion of the select board, for example, to create XYZ additional slots? Is that how it works?
So typically what happens is if a department manager, say the treasurer collector, felt that there was a need for additional staffing, if I felt that we had myself and my assistant and then we needed an additional spot, there would be a job description created. The job description would come, Tracy would have a conversation about budget with that additional spot within the department, and then that job description would come before the classification subcommittee. It would get analyzed and rated and put into a slot, and then it would be, if it could be funded through the budget and there was a job description, it would be added as a role. There may be at times, there would be positions that would have to go before the select board. That would be under their purview to hire. I can't think of one right off the top of my
what you're saying
head.
is-
Well, I mean, I can think of, so for police officers, I, as the chief of police, make a recommendation for appointment for vacancies or filled positions. It's up to the select board to appoint those staff. Whereas my civilian employees, like our dispatchers, for example, that's the town administrator has the authority to appoint those civilian positions, at least for my department. So I have a difference under my realm of who I need to go to actually hire somebody for different positions.
You just couldn't willy-nilly say, oh, we need more police officers.
No.
Beyond your, what do they call it, the table of allowance, or whatever the state law gives you in this municipality for numbers of officers, for example.
Correct, and like Diane is saying, if I want to change that number, I would have a meeting with Tracy. If it was in my budget, we would talk about how does that impact this fiscal year, how does that impact next fiscal year? Is that something we can do, and if so, how and why? If I'm looking to add not only bodies, but money, right, there's a different process that we would go, before. How are we getting that money? Is it something we need to go before the finance committee for? Is it something that needs to go get approved through the select board? I'm sure I haven't had to do that yet, so I don't know, but there are different avenues. Is it something that's already within my budget? If so, how and why? And how does it impact next year? Versus, did I get a grant for a new position and just need to get the grant approved by the select board? So there's a couple different things that could happen with it.
Question about that? Were you done with your question,
Yeah.
Madam Chair?
Oh.
So along those same lines, in your budget, do you typically, if you all of a sudden think, while we need a new position for whatever reason, X, Y, Z, your budget already is approved, you're in the fiscal year, do you have extra monies in your budget that you could, devote to a new position if needed?
Traditionally, no.
Okay.
Yeah.
That's why I'm saying
no.
traditionally, absolutely not.
That's
Right.
done that's done at the budget level, so
Yeah.
usually, typically when you're going in for the budget, with your budget proposal, you would say, here's my staff, here's what my staff, is looking for fiscal '24, this is what my existing staff, and if there's any change or any other criteria that would go into adding someone at that point, or changing the staff, or it would be determined at that time. But again, things can happen, so for example, if someone announced they're in retirement, and we have to add a secondary role to sort of have this transition,
Yep.
that's what Patty is speaking to, as far as you'd go back to meet with Tracy, you'd have to probably adjust your budget through the FinCom and make an adjustment so that in mid-year, there would be enough in your budget to pay for that secondary position, with the idea that there's a transition or a change coming. So typically it's done at the beginning of the year, sometimes it happens mid-year. There are different avenues to add staff for different reasons at different times.
How
So
does
we
that-
don't just add staff for the,
Yeah. And there's no extra money in a budget to just
Yeah, I
throw
didn't
somebody
think so,
on if
but
I
I was
wanted
just
to.
thinking.
Yeah, no. That's why I said, if we receive a grant, we have to go before the select board to get the grants approved, before you can execute those grants. So that was just one avenue of how it might be mid-year, that you might be able to add a staff member.
And you would have applied for a grant.
You would have had to have applied for the grant.
Yeah.
Once you received the award letter, you would go before the select board to get the grant approved and accepted,
Okay, yep,
so that you could then execute the grant and hire whatever staffing was allowed under the grant.
okay.
You have flexibility, you have any thresholds to get through to activate reserve officer status to regular?
No, because it's a budgeting issue, so there's a pay increase that would have to happen. So again, it would have to be a recalculation of a budget.
Okay.
And with police reform, reserve officers are no longer, they're phasing out.
Okay.
Mm,
Any other questions?
okay.
All right. I guess we will move on to checking our calendars for March 27th.
Yep, all good.
Good.
Good? Okay, so we will meet on March 27th at 4 o'clock,
Weather permitting.
weather permitting.
Dale, go ahead.
It's spring by that time, isn't it?
Tulip time by then.
And if
And
no one
don't
has
jinx us.
anything else?
You all remember the April Fool's Day storm a few years ago.
I lost
Oh, yeah.
11 trees.
I will entertain a
Down
motion
like-
for adjournment.
So
Second.
Line, so, second.
All right. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.